Test, test, 1, 2, 3, 4. Test, test.
There we go. Good evening. We are going to call the meeting to order. Olivia, can you do roll call, please?
Mrs. Berrigan,
Here.
Mrs. Sanborn, Miss Anderson,
Here.
Mrs. Ward,
Here.
Dr. Watkins.
Here.
Okay, we need to approve the agenda for the evening. Do I have a motion? Motion.
Second.
That was Michelle Anderson motioning and Dr. Watkins seconding. All those in favor? Aye. Motion passes. And we do have a number of public comments tonight, so for those of you joining us via the virtual world, they'll take a little while to get through. I think there's 34 of them total. So we appreciate you staying with us during that time. We appreciate the public comments that we've received. We know that people feel very passionately about the topic that we are discussing tonight, and I can guarantee you that we all feel very passionately as well about that. So thank you again for your public comments. We are going to do them in a round robin, as I am still recovering and short of breath, and the staff have kindly given me the shortest comments tonight, which means you all have longer comments. You're welcome. And then we'll just start with Dr. Watkins, then Michelle will read one, I'll read one, and we'll round robin that, and we can all take a break, okay?
We'll do one at a time.
One at a time. Yeah, you're welcome. All right, you go on ahead.
Okay. This one is from Billy Silvers, Allen Street. It says, Dr. Sprout and the governing board, I would like to start by thanking Dr. Sprout for all of the time they have spent hearing me out. I can't imagine what it is to be a district superintendent. In a time like this, I appreciate all the emails and phone calls. I can't stress enough how disappointing it is that I am not allowed to be in person or on the virtual call to voice my concerns about the education of my children. My comments being read by a board member who knows nothing about me or my level of frustration is less than adequate. As president of a small business, I have had to deal with COVID in the workplace. As I am not comparing my situation of managing 25 employees to that of running a school district through a pandemic, I do understand the importance of keeping them around me safe. Last April, I was asked to help come up with a plan to deal with the situation of keeping my employees safe and still trying to figure out how to run a business. After all, we still had to make payroll. When presented with the challenges, we did something that seemed very simple to me. We presented all the facts and then gave each employee the choice of working remotely or coming in. If they decided to work remotely, they had to hit certain performance metrics. If they did not hit them, they were asked to come back in. To this date, we have had 2 positive cases and not a single complaint about our COVID policy. Everyone understood the risk of working from home and not getting work done. They understood the risk of exposure by coming in. From there, they got on their own decision. They were informed and had a choice. We have respected that choice since day one. I know that your situation is much more complex than mine. What if you guys presented us with all the facts? Every day for the last 9 months, we have COVID metrics shoved in our face. I don't even drive to work without seeing a sign that says mask up or stay home. We get it. What it showed us is that test scores that Dr. Sprout presented in the last board meeting aren't those going out with every email that contains a COVID chart. Our community is not informed on the education side of the equation. We know that the COVID numbers are bad. You as educators know that our test scores are bad. Why aren't you making those scores more visible to the parents of our district? We all understand the situation, and I believe that most of us understand why the test scores are bad. It is not a reflection of the effort of our school staff. We know that our teachers are trying, but isn't working. If learning is the #1 metric as educators, how are you performing right now? What would happen to our parent surveys if more of us knew how bad the test scores were? What if we couldn't shut down schools until we hit a certain academic metrics? I know we all want to think that this thing is going to go away, but in reality, it just doesn't go away. We are now on day 200, and whatever it is, the 15th day of slow the spread, you are told back in April. There are moments that our children are never going to get back. I My daughter is in first grade, and most of her education has now been on a Zoom call. We don't know the long-term impacts of what we're asking children to do, but we know that it is happening to them now. They are not learning like they did before COVID. How much longer can we sustain this? With all due respect to the Learning Recovery Committee, I don't think that will move the needle. I would encourage the board to stop appearing to ignore the obvious point that virtual learning is not working for most of our kids. Please present us with all the facts so that you can make informed decisions. A lot has changed since we started using the country metrics for guidance. At this point, we know our schools are probably not going to make a difference when it comes to community spread, and we know that virtual learning is not working. Sincerely, Willie Silvers, parent, education advocate from first and third grade at the same point.
All right, I have a comment from Linda Abeg at Winston Drive. She's a parent. Her comment is, thank you to the governing board and district leadership for calling this meeting. I know there is a lot going on behind the scenes in these hard school decisions, and I appreciate you taking the time to share with the public. I have shared a lot of data with you in the past showing that schools have been successful in opening safely. Dr. Sprout shared very persuasive information at the last governing board meeting demonstrating that Levine schools were able to open safely in the second quarter. So I won't spend any more time stating what has been stated many times by many people, that with mitigation strategies, schools are safe in person. Our schools continue to get safer as staff members are vaccinated. Teachers were put ahead of many others to get the vaccine so that they could be safe teaching in person. I ask that you open schools, or at the very least, set a date in the third quarter to open, giving staff the opportunity to be vaccinated. As schools reopen, I ask that you consider the individual needs of each class and school. Please do targeted quarantines instead of district-wide closures. If you choose not to open the entire district at the same time, please open where it makes the most sense. Estrella Foothills has small class sizes for distancing, so it makes sense that they should open. Dale Point's dual language immersion program needs to be in person to achieve the immersion part. Online learning is particularly difficult for our youngest students, so those primary grades could be prioritized. Educators are experts at differentiating to meet the needs of each student, so let's put those skills to use here and give as many families as possible the option to choose what is best for their children. My last comment is in regards to our preschools. I fully support and applaud the district's December decision to return to hybrid for our self-contained classes in developmental preschool. I was disappointed, however, to find out that the district instead opened all of the preschools. I am opposed to the preschools getting special treatment because they are tuition funded instead of state funded. Again, thank you for all the time, effort, and consideration you are putting into these decisions. Please return to hybrid so that parents have a choice and say in what is best for their children.
The next one is from Amanda Jones, 5538 West Winston Drive, and she is a parent. I believe the schools have shown they can manage students in person safely. It sends a suspicious message to parents to say tuition-based programs can operate safely while state-funded classrooms cannot. Likewise, it is an odd standard that low-wage childcare workers can spend indoor classroom time with children, but higher-paid educators cannot. Both the childcare services and full-time school last fall were able to operate without an outbreak. Returning to the hybrid option would give parents the option to keep children home if they wish. I know short.
Mine's not. Okay. My comment is from Dr. Ryan Centers on South 55th Lane. He's a parent and a district president. Dear Dr. Sprout and Levine Governing Board, I understand you all have a very difficult decision to make. I wanted to provide some perspective as a parent, local business owner, and an advocate for the district. As a public district and elected official, it is important to hear perspectives from all constituents. The board made the necessary decision to move back to remote learning in November, and I was in support of this decision. The vaccine was not available, and we were heading into Christmas break. However, as the COVID climate has evolved and vaccines are available for teachers and those most at risk in our community, it is not clear why a return date has not been set. As a fellow educator, I understand relying on the data to make informed decisions. However, I believe making decisions solely based on community spread data is too narrow in scope. Additional data is important to consider, as other districts have done. Additional data points to consider include current living mitigation strategies, vaccine availability for teachers, and a general benefit and risk assessment. I believe you would all agree Levine's mitigation strategies have been exemplary. My kids have been sent home 3 times for suspicion of COVID and have been tested to see it was negative. My kids are asked routinely to pull their masks over their nose, and your sanitation procedures are effective. Our district is taking it seriously. Teachers are now taking advantage of the vaccine, and it is an option for teachers who want it. The loss of learning from our kids is significant. We all know this. Our teachers have done an amazing job this year compared to what they were forced into in the spring. However, this modality is setting up our kids for years of loss. My wife and I had to move our 4 kids out of Paseo Point's DLI program because they could not keep up with the Spanish and were falling behind in the basics of their education. We moved them to Australia and they started to thrive. Then things went back online. I don't want to think about all the other kids in our district who don't have the ability to spend hours working with their kids or make a shift in their kids' school. As any business owner, administrator, or leader, it is important to constantly do a risk and benefit analysis. I ask the board to look at the loss of learning from our students. Our kids have lost almost an entire year. Attendance is suffering. Kids are not logging in, cameras are off, homework is not being turned in. I have been reached by principals in the district to provide incentives for our Levine kids because they are not logging in. I'm happy to, however, incentives are only a superficial band-aid. Kids are weary and so are the parents. I am a college professor and I was trying to help my daughter with 4th grade math the other night. I told her to type in the comments, my dad tried to help me, but he didn't understand this either, unquote. This is what our education has come down to. Additionally, the rationale that we can have unlimited kids in learning labs and open our preschool programs but not public education doesn't make coherent sense. If we care about our younger students, why not K2? All the educators on the board know that this stage of development is just as critical as preschool. Is it because of the small class sizes? Okay, how about Australia only has 10 kids? Should they be allowed to come back? The only rationale for these decisions appear to be financially motivated rather than in the best needs of the children and teacher. The district has to pay for preschool teachers. We don't get public funds, and now the district is losing funds because enrollment is low, so they must return to work. We have certified public school preschool teachers who are required to go back to the classroom, but not my son's 1st grade teacher. If the motivation is about health and safety, I don't understand how their health is any less important. As leaders in our community, we must have consistency in our decisions. Our classified staff and preschool teachers' health are no less valuable. I don't believe that is the intention, however, this is the public perspective. I ask the board to please set a realistic date for in-person education to return. My recommendation is 2 weeks from your board meeting. This will allow the necessary time for additional teachers to be vaccinated, for mitigation strategies to be updated, and families time to transition. If we rely solely on the DHS benchmarks, we will be online until May. However, I believe we have a sober-minded, rationale, and thoughtful board that will take in more factors than just a set of benchmarks. Other districts are setting a date. Our kids need this, our community and families need this. It's time to go back. Best, Dr. Brian Centers, Levine parent, business owner, school district advocate.
Next is from a parent, Yuritsi is the name, 4826 West St. Anne Avenue, probably the shortest one of the night. It says, please keep online learning as an option as long as COVID-19 is a threat to our health.
Great. The next one is Amber Villavaso at 5325 West Samantha Way. Her comment, we are now 6 months into the school year. There are 0 reasons why parents who wish to send their kids to school are not being given the option. You have more than enough time to come up with plans and find out which staff are willing to teach in person. There was no major outbreaks when kids were there this fall. You have opened all the preschools, which are paid. The kids club is open, which is paid. The learning labs are open. Clearly, safety is not the issue here. You're losing enrollments by the day. Test scores are going down. Enough is enough. And still, the majority of you making these choices have 0 children going to school in Levine. You should be ashamed of yourselves for allowing this to go on for so long. We don't feel safe to return. We are simply asking for the choice. Just like so many of you in this district promote school choice. Our choice is in-person learning for everyone, not just those who are paying.
The next one is from Christina George, 5617 West Euclid. She's a parent and a resident in the district. Please let the children remain in on-campus learning. The children need to be in school. I, for one, have a child with a speech delay, and he needs to be with his teachers and peers so that he doesn't fall behind.
Mine, I have Avery Shivers, living in Arizona, student. Can you please put us back in school? I like it better than online because I understand my teacher more. I am in Mr. Bortes and Ms. Shaw's first grade class at Paseo Point Elementary. Thank you.
Next comment is from a parent, Timothy Capone, 8020 South 54th Lane. My son, as well as many other students in the district, I'm sure, is really struggling with distance online learning. My son is usually a straight A student who's going to school in person. He suffers from ADHD and really struggles outside of a structured environment, like a person learning in school. He is having a really hard time even getting out of the C range on his grades. He has a hard time finding an avenue to talk to the teachers for help, due to the embarrassment of speaking over Google Meets in front of all of his classmates. Getting one-on-one help by a computer isn't the same as getting hands-on, in-person help from his teachers. We hope the school board can find a way to bring the kids back in in-person learning, because a lot of kids, including mine, are starting to get left behind. Thank you for your time and consideration.
Next comment is from Adrienne Shivers in Laveen, Arizona. She's a parent and district resident. Her comment is, Dr. Sprout and members of the board, thank you for taking the time to meet this meeting to discuss the return to hybrid learning. It is no secret that the current COVID numbers in our community are concerning, and I understand how important it is to take that into consideration when making this difficult decision. As has been proven by the state testing results shared on January 7th, learning loss in our students is also very concerning. Both of our kids attend Paseo Point Elementary and are attempting to do dual language immersion online. This model cannot be supported. Our teachers are doing their best, but it is not enough. Please set a reasonable date to return to hybrid learning. I urge you to consider returning to the hybrid model in early February. My fear is that you will meet this evening having already decided on a return date that is even extended a natural school break, i.e. spring break. Please do not delay in-person learning until then. I ask what the point is in pushing it out so far. Is it to allow community numbers to come down? Will the district's campus COVID response not be the same in 2 weeks as it would be in March? I sincerely hope and believe that our district will respond appropriately to COVID cases in schools on a school-by-school basis, as Dr. Sprout mentioned, and can move forward with a sound plan in 2 weeks, backed by data from the fall that confirms our schools were a safe environment. We have school health data, many of our teachers have access to the vaccine, and our students need to be put first this time. Do not delay our return to in-person. There is so much to be gained by allowing students to be back in the classroom. And if there is a COVID concern within a school or class, it can be responded to quickly, as many schools have successfully demonstrated that have students in person. Please do not delay past another 2 weeks. Thank you for your time, Adrienne Shivers.
Dr. Sprout, I just want to make sure we're okay. Is that not the camera that the community sees us on?
Mr. Pino, everyone can, the YouTube is still running, right?
Yes, okay,
If
good.
the audio is working, we have a picture of you up there.
Okay, perfect. Sandra Aguilar, 6805 West Maldonado Road. She is a parent. Next to it says student, I think means she has a student in the district. I'd like to vote that we make it in-person learning. My kids do much better in person, even if there are strict rules to follow. I'm glad there's strict rules. That was my comment. They need structure and learn better being there physically.
This is from Cooper Shivers, living in Arizona, a student. Hi, my name is Cooper Shivers. I go to Paseo Point. I'm in 3rd grade with Mrs. Delgado. I would like it if you put us back in person because sometimes after my classes, my eyes turn red and they get super itchy. I would get to go to recess with my friends. Also, I have 3.5 hours of school online and 7 hours of school in person. And in person, you learn a lot easier. If you look at our MAP scores last year, we were in person, so they were a lot better than this year because this year we were online. So this is why I want to go back in person.
Next comment is from Vicky Ward, 8610 South 54th Lane, parent, employee, district resident. With the Arizona COVID numbers being one of the highest in the nation, and a governor who does not take the situation seriously, I feel now is not the time to reopen the schools. Hospitals are running over capacity, and pediatric hospitalizations are the highest since the start of the pandemic. Children might not have a high mortality rate, but remember the complications brought on by the disease that can last a lifetime. We have made great strides to keep our students safe while on campus. And what about when they're not? Weekend birthday parties, sporting events and tournaments, large gatherings where people do not wear masks, and then on Monday back to school. We have just started receiving our vaccinations as staff, and a lot of us still have not gotten our first ones yet. Please give us time to receive our vaccinations to protect us from the horrible disease. Thank you for allowing me to share my concerns.
Comment from Danielle Bailey at 7308 South 74th Lane in Levine. Her comment is the opening of in-person school. Please let it be an option for parents to choose. My kids are all suffering from the pandemic and it's really hurting them emotionally and with academics, no social interaction as well. And it's hardly been any COVID cases at the school they attend here in Levine too. Charter Eagle College Club South Mountain.
Catherine McMillan, 4121 West St. Charles Avenue, she's a resident of the district. Please follow the science. Please follow the metrics established by the state for returning to hybrid or in-person learning. Please don't pretend that any of us as governing board members any of you as governing board members are smarter than scientists or epidemiologists. Keep your staff and learners safe and only allow hybrid or in-person learning when community spread is low and is safe to do so.
Masako Gardner at 7723 South 32nd Drive, Levine, parent. Dear board, as a mom of 3 boys ranging 3 to 6th grades at Vista, I would love the school to offer both options again. I understand some families are liking virtual learning, but it has been very difficult for us. We are both working parents and we cannot monitor if our children are listening or just daydreaming in front of computers. I found out that some of them are missing several assignments, which I don't understand why, because they are in front of their computers every day. I asked them why and they are not even sure. They are all in gifted programs with typically good grades, but listening through computers is just not the same. They just simply tune themselves out. I can tell they are more sad generally, and tonight I asked them if they'd rather go back to school or stay online, and they all picked to go back to school without even thinking. They know that they will still need to wear face masks all day and eat in assigned air seats in the cafeteria just back last fall. But they would still love to go back. They miss going to school. As our family is not high risk, I am willing to send our children because the risk outweighs all the other stresses that we are experiencing. Please reconsider offering both options. Thank you.
Next comment is from Lawrence Wright, parent, 3227 West Dunbar Drive. I think the students are getting too much work during the day. Sometimes my students are up late evenings and completing their assignments. My 8th grade has 4 classes. He is assigned at least 3 assignments per day every 2 class. Same goes for my 6th grader as well. I think this is extreme. I've noticed that some teachers do record the lessons, but others do not. Recording lessons, the students will help the students return to the material if they are having difficulties with the assignment, since textbooks are not provided. I was told by my 6th grade math teacher during parent-teacher conference last week that he sometimes doesn't record, and if he comes to class with his grade, he record. So I think this is a poor excuse. Even if a student was in class, they may still need to return to the lesson to review. I know this are very difficult times for all. I know my student did very well in person, opposed to online. My opinion, and it may be different from all, when I was in college a few years ago, I thought that online learning was very simple and straightforward. I wish the Google Classroom platform would be just that simple. In conclusion, I wish the pandemic was over and we could send our kids back to the classroom. Thank you for your time and working hard for the Levine School District.
Next comment is from Katrina Martinez at 4222 West Carter Road in Phoenix. Her comment, hello. This is our first year in the Levine District. Previously, we have been at Legacy Traditional School for 8 years. I have huge regrets of being in the Levine District since we have had little in-person school. We need to have a choice to be in person. Those that don't want to be in person don't have to be. I'm speaking on behalf of my family who has already had COVID and have jobs where we work with the public in person. If we are not in person soon, we will move our 2 children to in-person schools. The future of funding for Levine District is in jeopardy, just like other schools. They are not giving families a choice. We have a 202 freeway now, and it is very easy to hop on the freeway and go to a school to have in person for a child. Please look at the kids. Look at how they are getting depressed and failing. Is it really worth it? The Sale Point proved to you all how safe and clean they could keep the school when they were in person. Learning labs are running without issues. Open your schools for the future of our kids.
Tracy Capal, 8010 South 54th Lane, she's a parent. It's time we finally have a choice. If it becomes more available, I'd even be willing to make sure all children going back in person have gotten the vaccine. I fear for the future of our country if our kids have to go on much longer without hands-on teaching.
Carolina Perez Martinez, it's from 6884 West Maldonado Road, a parent. As a parent of a child with ADHD, staying home doing virtual school hasn't been much helpful for him. My child is in 6th grade with 3 teachers. His classes only last the most 20 minutes. He hasn't learned anything new and has mentioned that the material being taught is from the previous school year. I, as a parent, noticed that he was improving academically while he was in school with small class sizes. Every day he was coming home excited of what he learned in the day. His grades improved and his behavior too. Smaller class sizes and keeping the protocols CDC has given out, kids will do better in school. The whole state has been open except our schools. Give parents the option again to choose if we want to send our kids to school or not. If you require students to have their immunization, why not teachers? Kids who have learning disabilities will do better in school. I ask for you to open up the schools again.
Next parent is Nindy Wadwa, 4519 West Hoppy Trail. Dear Governing Board, I have 3 children currently attending Vista Del Sur, an 8th grader, a 5th grader, and a kindergarten. The jobs our teachers have done with our kids has been awesome. I really appreciate their commitment to our kids. Our children started this year online, went back in person, then went back online. All 3 of our children have grown, however, I feel the growth could be significantly greater if they were back in person. Our greatest challenge has been with our kindergarten. We always need to make sure someone is supervising, helping them stay on task and just focusing on a lesson. We are grateful that at least the last parent has been able to stay home. I am also concerned about the general well-being of students here in Levine. Some of our Levine kids don't have a safe or stable home environment. I feel that there are those who are being left behind. If a staff or teacher at our schools are comfortable with it, I do advocate for a return in-person learning as soon as possible. I commend the district and all that it has done this year. Thank you for all you do. Sincerely, Mindy Wadwa.
Comment from Catherine Peterson at 3251 West Sunland Avenue, a parent. Her comment is this: please continue to follow the guidelines of public health experts in reopening schools. I know this is hard for kids and for families. It's harder for some than others. I work in healthcare. Our hospitals are still overwhelmed. Healthcare workers are exhausted. I appreciate the decisions you've made thus far, the way safety was addressed while the schools were open, etc. I know kids are much lower risk for serious illness than other groups, but they're also more likely to spread it. For the food of the community, schools need to stay closed until our numbers improve and or other industries close to offset the community risk. I know this isn't ideal, but kids are resilient. They can do hard things. If you were to expand to only one service, I would request that it be special ed education. I think those kids are particularly struggling with virtual learning. Thanks for everything you do for our kiddos, Corey and Catherine Peterson.
Heidi Little, 7320 West Beverly, she's a parent. All of her comments are questions, so can someone get back to her and answer the questions? Thank you. If school goes to hybrid model, where do children go on off days? Free programs available. Are there free programs available for off days during hybrid modes?
This is an email address from, looks like Mitch G. Volkney82@gmail.com, a parent. As a healthcare worker, essential worker, I feel that our children have been forgotten about. They have been shoved around with no real schedule to assist them in becoming successful students. They have been moved from one program to another since March. As essential parents, we do not have the option of staying home to homeschool our children. Our children need a safe place to go where they can learn. The Learning Lab that is now open to give them a place to go, but we are instructed there will be no educational assistance to our children while they are there because there are no teachers on staff, only aides. There are children there who can't even read the instructions on their assignments. All you are offering is a low-grade babysitting service, and our children deserve more. The essential children cannot be forgotten about any longer.
Next comment is from Kimberly Bryant, 8220 South 74th Avenue, parent, Sail Point PTA president. I have two children at Sail Point Elementary, one in 6th grade, one in 4th grade. Our children overall have adjusted to online learning and are overall well-behaved and follow the rules. Recently, my children have started exhibiting behaviors such as logging off before class ends, not completing tests or homework, and overall just being distracted. This is abnormal behavior for them, and I feel it's cause of it is due to online learning. There's no actual way for the teachers to hold them accountable outside of an email to the parent. And myself and their father both work during the day and are unable to stand over them to ensure that they're paying attention when completing work. This behavior is out of character for my children. I feel homeschooling is taking an emotional toll on them. When school did return 6 weeks, they were thriving, wearing their masks as required without complaining and doing well overall. I feel the school needs to reopen for the emotional and social well-being of our children.
Next comment is from Michelle Porter at 7617 South 69th Lane. For comment, I just want to share that as a parent of 4 living students, if my preschooler can return to in-person schooling, then so can my older students. I signed up for in-person learning. That means I want my kids in person. Data reporting for today seems to show and suggest we are rounding the top of the second wave and numbers should trend down in the coming weeks. If it should be presented, I am against a requirement to get the vaccine before returning to school.
This is from Christian and Mackenzie Schultz, 5621 West Carson. With the vaccine now available for teachers, we believe it's time for our children to be back in school. The quality of education has suffered tremendously over the past 3 semesters. With in-person learning, we can start to get our children's education back on track.
This is from Claudine Delaney, 7149 West Beverly Road, parent, district resident. I would love for parents to have a choice for in-person learning. I moved 2 of my kids from Vista to EFGA last semester for many reasons, but specifically because of the opportunity for in-person learning. The fact that the numbers were so low at the school, but we are still not able to be in person has been an extreme disappointment, only lessened somewhat by the availability of learning labs. Even if other schools are not reopened, I don't understand why EFGA would not be, with the smaller class sizes designed for in-person learning during this pandemic and parents who have chosen it. I also have another child that I have just transferred out of Vista and into a charter school, solely for the benefit of in-person learning. He declined so much in the last semester in terms of priorities and distractibility that we had no choice but to transfer. We also found that we were far from alone in this. You will lose more students and families to charter and private schools if you do not give us a choice. I know your job is challenging and there are no easy solutions. Thank you for your work and serious consideration.
Next is from Jeff Hale, 4702 West Piedmont Drive, parent, student in the district. Please allow our children to return to in-school learning. All of the health professionals agree that it's safe and appropriate. Eric Chris has repeatedly stated we need to keep our schools open and make sure that our kids are getting the education and the services they need. Anthony Fauci further agrees and states close the bars and keep the schools open. Keeping the schools closed, are you saying that you're better than the health professionals? The health risk to the students is more negligible. They are at higher risk of tragedy on a bus accident on the way to school than from this disease. And the risk to the teachers is also small, considering the rate of transmission among the young is so small. please let my kids have the opportunity for in-school learning.
Next comment is from Christy O'Keefe, 7009 South 45th Lane, parent, district resident. I have addressed this issue before, and unfortunately, due to the fact that LESD bowed to being scared and unable to stand up and be confident in their procedures, the board still voted to return to 100% online school. Due to this, I did withdraw my son and enroll him in a local charter school that is doing what they can to stay in person. This shows me that other schools understand what our children need, and they understand that this virus can be handled. LESD has proven that they love money over our children's welfare by opening their tuition-based programs and by keeping their learning labs, which parents pay for, instead of helping all the kids in the district stay in person. I may have left, hoping this will hit you in the pocketbook a little bit, but still have many friends whose kids remain in the district, due to the fact that they do not have the same options as I did, mainly due to kids' ages. For these friends and their children who I love, I urge you to get these kids back into the classroom. LESD was handling the virus just fine with minimal cases and the ability to keep it out of 2 of the 9 schools altogether. Please finally take the time to stand up for the mental health of our kids and get them back in person. Maybe if parents felt that they were heard, they would speak more, but at some point we get tired of repeating ourselves and not seeing any results. Thank you for your time, and please help our kids.
Okay, next one is from E.G. Abolis, 3315 West Fractor Road. My husband and I would request that our school district return to hybrid learning. The protocols for COVID previously being followed at Vista were appreciated and successful before we returned back to virtual learning in November. Our daughter benefits greatly by being able to interact in person with her teachers and peers. Our hope is that we can move back to hybrid learning with the same safety measures in place.
I have no more. And we have no more. So next comment. All I have is a comment from a concerned family, which states, please hold out until the vaccine has been distributed. The numbers are exploding in our state and ICUs are full. It's not the time to rush it. Please hold on a little longer.
I have one more as well from, yeah, that was a little long.
I'll read it for you.
Thank you.
The last comment that we have tonight is from Stephanie Sherling at 8013 South 54th Avenue as the parent. Her comment is, over the weekend I read 2 articles that talk about a 4,000% increase in kids being admitted to the hospital for COVID cross-case issues. This is an increase just from December. In addition to that, they are seeing an increase of having to cancel procedures because drastically more kids are testing positive for COVID. This means we will have students coming to school not knowing they are contagious. They will spread it to teachers, staff, and friends, which in turn will take it home to their families. The hospitals are at capacity and asking us to make smart choices. A smart and responsible choice is to keep school closed. We need to do what we can to stop our community numbers from increasing. We need to stay home the remainder of the year. Give time for the vaccine to be given and time for it to work. Then we can all return to a semi-normal 2021 to 2022 school year. My 3 children will absolutely not be returning to campus this year.
Okay, those are all of our public comments. Sorry, we will go ahead and move into, I think it's the presentation from Dr. Sprout to the update on factors impacting returning to hybrid learning.
Thank you, President Berrigan, governing board members. The goals of tonight's presentation are to provide you with an update on vaccination opportunities for staff, and also to make a recommendation for you to consider tonight for the return to our hybrid instructional model. I've used this slide in every presentation, and I've added one thing to it just to elaborate our commitments. And the first one, throughout this process, our team has been focused on student, staff, and community safety, and also providing an outstanding learning and instructional environment to our students. We work on that all the time in very challenging circumstances, but I want to emphasize that the goal of that is high student achievement, and that we watch the numbers for our students, we care about their achievement, and by the way, when I say achievement, I'm talking about growth, that every student in our district has an opportunity to move forward. You saw the data at our last meeting. We know that we have some recovery, as I've called it, to do, and we are dedicated in the months and whatever time it takes ahead to address that. And I will have more information for the governing board at our next meeting on our Learning Recovery Committee and where they are in that process. We also care deeply and are committed to the social and emotional wellness of our students and staff. We do want to provide options to parents for their children. And we have also said data over dates, and that we have not arbitrarily set dates or even set any dates for the change in a learning model, and have relied on data. So what are those data sources? Well, our current approach, we have relied heavily on community metrics. That was all we had. We have relied heavily on community metrics, and we have a current governing board approved community metric for the district to return to the hybrid model, which is that we are in the moderate range for percent positivity and cases per 100,000 for 2 consecutive weeks. That was the main data piece that we had to go with. We also, though, presented to the governing board our school metrics, and which give a strong indication that we do have good mitigation strategies in place on our campuses. We have a new source of data that I'd like to talk with you about tonight regarding the vaccinations of our school employees, of our district employees, and I'll head into that right now and give you an update. So school personnel throughout the state are in phase 1B priority for receiving the vaccination, to maximize protection of school staff and also to keep schools open. And all of our staff have been given an opportunity to pursue a vaccination. And we've given presentations, we have communicated consistently with our staff all the information there is regarding their opportunities to be vaccinated. We know that many of our staff have already received or scheduled vaccinations at the State Farm Stadium, at the Chandler and Avondale points of distribution. At those sites, they administer the Pfizer vaccine. There are 3 weeks between the first and second doses. There is an immunity after the first dose at 52% and 95% immunity after the second dose. We feel that most of our staff are taking advantage of this opportunity, and we know that many are already scheduling their second vaccine. We also have a closed pod point of distribution for Levine and Phoenix area schools. It will be at Cesar Chavez. That is the Moderna vaccine. And those will be, we're going to have a 2-day pod at Chavez starting tomorrow and on Saturday. And that is available to all Levine staff. And there are still availability for people to schedule the vaccine. Last time we checked tonight, our staff can still schedule a vaccine at Cesar Chavez tomorrow or on Saturday. The second dose, we don't have a date yet, but it will be somewhere in the later in February, and we will get that information to our staff. But that will be part of this closed pod, not only the first dose, but also the second dose. The Moderna is a little bit different than the Pfizer. It has an 82% immunity after the first dose and a 94% immunity after the second dose. So we're looking at 2 very effective vaccines that our staff have an opportunity to receive. So on the return to hybrid, I wanted to remind the board and our community that we are ready, our staffing is set, our students are with the teachers that they will be for whenever we return to hybrid learning and for the remainder of the school year. We did ask parents during the second quarter to choose the learning model that they wish to receive for the remainder of the school year, and so everything is in place. And 52% of our students will be returning to in-person when we return to the hybrid learning. And that's around 3,600 students would be coming back to campus at that point. No matter what, we will not let up on our mitigation strategies and our mitigation, that they will continue to fully remain in place. And I'd just like to I'm going to read something here, and that is, I would like to express my gratitude to parents who submitted public comments tonight. I have greatly appreciated input from parents who have called, some very regularly, and you know who you are, and emailed me regularly to advocate for in-person learning, as well as those who have expressed their concerns about schools providing in-person learning. Likewise, I have greatly appreciated the input from our staff, who, like our parents, have opinions, passionate opinions, about our next steps. I would also like to thank our administrative team and executive team. We have spent hours and hours and hours together wrestling through these difficult questions. And finally, thank you to the governing board for your leadership throughout this pandemic. What has been a common thread is that we are doing our best in an extremely difficult situation, whether it be leading, parenting, teaching, or supporting the operations of the school district. We have been gracious in expressing our strong opinions. We are a community, and a very special community at that. So again, our current criteria for the resumption of hybrid learning is 2 consecutive weeks with percent positivity and cases per 100K in the moderate range. It is recommended to the governing board that if the current criteria is not met beforehand, then it is a recommendation that the district returns to hybrid learning on March 1st for all students, if we do not meet that metric. And just going back to community metrics, where I was kind of stumbling there is a reminder that we are not seeing an improvement right now in community metrics. We saw a little bit of percent positivity, but an increase in cases per 100K from the data that was released today. But again, the recommendation is if we can't meet the criteria, that we do set a date. And this date is based on 2 factors. One is it allows us to bring students back before spring break for a week to get to work everything out and then be able to hit the ground running at the beginning of the 4th quarter. And secondly, it gives all of our staff an opportunity to be vaccinated twice and maximizes the safety of the staff. Thank you, President Barrett.
You're welcome. Any comments or questions for Dr. Strong or in general? I know y'all.
I have lots of comments.
Okay, I think Michelle said it first. We'll let Michelle go first, then Ms. Ward, and then Dr. Watkins. I mean, you have comments, don't you? Okay. We'll go in that order, and I'll already say.
So I have comments. I have for several months felt the need that we need to have in-person schooling happen. We gave our families, our community, a choice of what type of education that they need. When we were in person, we had great mitigation strategies occurring, which led to very little to 0 cases occurring. We have several teachers who are ready to be in person. We have several families who are ready to be in person. We already have learning labs. Our our preschool and our self-contained kids, and our self-contained kids can typically be more vulnerable to illness, who are in person right now. And my understanding is that there are 0 to very little cases of COVID that are happening. I think that we need to be able to provide that option for our families. I have a lot of family in other states, New York and Texas, California, where they have in-person schooling going on, and they have very little cases, even though there might be a lot of community spread. We have a lot of private and charter schools here in our community and within Maricopa County that have in-person learning going on and have had learning going on in person since the beginning of the school year. And they are still providing learning in person. And we are definitely seeing with virtual learning, it's definitely not for all kids. It is for some, but not for all kids. And we are definitely seeing some gaps in regression. I know it's taking a toll emotionally and socially for kids. I know this is a very challenging, we are in challenging circumstances that myself being an educator, I've had many opportunities to be a part of virtual Zoom classes to test kids individually. I have tested kids for many years, and this year it's certainly been extremely heartbreaking in where kids are at academically. And kids have even expressed to me how much they miss being in person. So I do appreciate some of the student comments tonight as well. We have several who are getting the vaccine, so I think that's great. We can move towards that in-person learning, but I really feel it is important to provide that option for our community to have in person. You know, there are a lot of vital things that we need in our life, even like to survive, and that one of those is food, but we don't see grocery stores shutting down. Education is extremely important for our kids, but yet for some reason, we don't have a lot of our kids in person. So I really feel very strongly about getting our kids back in person as quickly as we can.
Thank you, Mrs. Anderson. Mrs. Ward?
Thank you, President Durgan. From the start of the pandemic, my focus has been on community safety of the teachers and the staff. My initial vote to shut down in-person learning was based on our understanding of the spread at the time, and my vote was to keep our teachers and staff safe. My last vote to continue with virtual learning was based on the high rate of community spread and in the logical hope that the gyms, the clubs, the sports practices, the parties, and the non-essential businesses and meetings would follow suit. Driving up tonight, the kids are all out there with no masks on practicing. Instead, those became an outlet for people who felt stuck at home, and like so many of our letter writers have stated, keeping children out of school no longer serves a purpose when everything else is open. Our teachers and staff have been given the opportunity to be vaccinated, and with a vote to delay the start of school until the 1st of March, all school associates who want will have had the vaccine and the booster. Based on the information we currently have regarding the efficacy of the vaccine, I'm comfortable asking teachers who do not have compromising health conditions to return to the classroom. As we continue to learn about this virus, I'm concerned about the unknowns regarding childhood spread and hope that a large percentage of parents will still be able to find a way to keep their children at home, but also understanding so many children can't, that I will vote in favor of reopening in the coming years. So, thank you, everyone.
March 1st.
March 1st.
Yeah,
May 1st, but I'll go with March.
Thank
And
you.
thank you, everybody who commented.
Thank you, Mrs. Ward. Dr. Morgan.
I'd like to say that I'm very honored and proud of the board and our city and the concern that we have for each other. Knowing how important education is and knowing that I would be where I am without having a good education, it's a tough thing. Governor Cuomo in New York, when he said, we're talking about death. Whatever that alternative is always better than that. So I have to look at a short-term compromise situation for families and community and schools, but long-term, what's our long-term goal? Our long-term goal is to have our loved ones around in the future. So I agree with the March 1st. I would hope it could be sooner. You know, the numbers can substantiate that. I'm for it. I do think we have extremely amazing mitigation strategies, and you know, our numbers were good when we were at a high rate before, but you know, at that time our numbers were way different, so it's really hard to say, yeah, that was a good situation. So I'm hoping and praying that the numbers, you know, get better before the first. But as of right now, to me, the first makes the most sense for the safety of everyone involved in this process. I'm grateful that we are, you know, being civil-minded and understanding that it's more than, you know, a GPA or a class list or falling behind. I get the emotional, definitely the emotional. I know there's the family dynamic has taken its toll, but you know, as a country, you know, we've lost 400,000 people, and you know, we haven't really put that on the table. Concern about our kids' education, which again, I can't say it's not important. There's so many other factors that may not affect your life, but affect so many others. So please have that in consideration when you think about the decisions that we have to make as a community.
Dr. Watkins? I did want to clarify a couple of things that I heard in comments real quick, Dr. Sprout. Schools need to have learning labs open in order to receive the enrollment stabilization grant, is that correct?
That is correct, and there is no tuition for a student to attend.
Thank you.
And our learning labs will continue to be open until we begin the hybrid model.
I know that there was some discussion about some financially motivated decisions. I can tell you that I don't think anybody here is motivated by finances, or you probably wouldn't be in education, because that's not where the money is. What I would add to that, though, is that the finances of our situation are something that we as a governing board do have to take into consideration, as well as Dr. Sprout and his team as a cabinet. So do you know-ish how much we're receiving for the enrollment stabilization grant? I'm putting you on the spot.
Kevin?
Is he on?
Kevin's here.
Kevin?
Okay, check it in. Can you hear me?
Yes. Did you hear the question?
It was something along the lines of the education, the ESG.
Yes. What approximately is our amount for ESG?
The amount almost is identical to what they cut us, is around $2 million. I think it's $2,124.
Okay, that sounds about right in comparison to the district I work for. So
It appears what Avondale is also.
yes. So in terms just for our community to understand, that is a fairly significant portion of the district's budget, around $40-ish million. If we didn't have that money, 80 to 85% of our budget is on teachers' salaries for the district as a whole, as well as those benefits. There's just not enough other things in a budget that you can cut. And we have contracts with teachers and staff and so forth, and so we would be in a very difficult situation if we didn't have our learning labs open in order to receive that enrollment stabilization grant. So I just wanted to make sure that the community understood that piece. I will say too, I don't know if anybody's seen the governor's budget proposal, but he did put $329 million in there for what he's calling like the makeup for the learning loss. And it's a fairly significant amount of money. It's based off the free and reduced lunch numbers. So for Levine, it would be a fairly significant amount of money in order to work on tutoring with students, and we're working on freeing up some flexibility so that's not just during the summertime, but hopefully throughout the school year. So we will have additional supports in order to be able to support what we are doing and already have started here in our committee for that learning loss. It's a difficult decision. Many of you have recognized the fact in your comments tonight that it's a difficult decision that we make, and I know Susan is here with us in spirit. But I want to focus too on the fact that Dr. Sprout, his cabinet, his principals are constantly talking about this, and I've mentioned it before. They wake up in the middle of the night, I have no doubt, thinking about this and what's in the best interest of our staff and our students. And it's because of that dedication that I take their recommendation. I've made it very clear before, as others on the board have as well. I would love for my daughter to be in person right now, and I would still love that. But I know that there are other issues to consider in terms of staffing and our community spread and things of that nature. And Dr. Sprout, his cabinet, the principals, everybody, they do take all of those things very much into consideration, as well as our public comments and how the public is feeling. And I very much appreciate all of the time that you guys put into that, all of the time that you put into keeping each of us updated and those calls that you take. You know, it's a significant issue, and it weighs heavily on all of us. So I think I will leave it at that and say I appreciate everything that you all do, and I appreciate our community and their support as well. Okay, so that is, we had moved into our discussion item there, and at this point, we need to have action for the governing board to take action to approve the plan to transition to hybrid learning beginning March 1st. Do I have a motion?
Motion.
Okay, Alodia, that is Fern that motioned, Dr. Watkins that made a second. And we have a motion and a second. All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Okay. No opposition, Alodia. We have a regular board meeting on February 4th at 5:30 right here. Sure.
That is, it's the latest date, right? that we-
Absolutely. I think, I don't know if it was in the presentation, but I know in the discussions that we talked about March 1st.
Monitoring the numbers that there's such numbers.
Absolutely. If the metrics are back in yellow, then we would open, correct?
We might want to go back to my presentation and reword the motion. We want to be extra careful here.
Okay, let's do that.
Watkins.
Yes.
Because what I did not want to lose was our current criteria, which is if community metrics do accrue prior to March 1st, that we would move back and we will be ready for that.
Okay, let's go to that
So can we
slide.
go to the last slide there? That perhaps our motion would be that if the current criteria, governing board adopted criteria, is not met before March 1st, that it is recommended the district returns to hybrid learning on March 1st for all students.
I would like to update my motion to reflect that.
Perfect.
Can you show those actual numbers, so everyone knows what those numbers are?
I believe
I know we did it previously, but I know we haven't.
Yeah,
The current numbers are
so
we
those are,
Let's make it
I can
forward.
tell you what they are, Dr. Watkins. They are less than 100 cases per 100,000 and less than a 10% positivity rate for 2 consecutive weeks. Did I answer?
You good? You look like you're positive. Dr.
Are you
Watkins,
referring
you good?
to, are you considering like making that information visible to the community on a weekly
Well, so they know
basis when that
what it
data comes
is.
out?
Yeah, I mean.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Agreed.
Just being transparent.
Absolutely.
This is the decision, this is why.
Absolutely.
And that's the.
Good clarification. Perfect. Okay, we have a motion of what Dr. Stroud said. Do we have a second?
Second.
Okay, so same motion and second, for our motion, Dr. Watkins seconded, Lydia. Motion and seconded, all those in favor? Aye. Any opposition? No.
No.
Okay, thank you. And we know the next board meeting, and with that, we can adjourn the meeting. Do I have a motion?
motion. Second.
Motion and seconded, that was Michelle that motioned, Fern that seconded, Elodia. I'm talking to Elodia like she's in this microphone. Motion and seconded, all those in favor? Aye. Meeting adjourned, see y'all February.